Alina's footsteps echoed through the reinforced corridors of the Antarctic bunker as security officers parted to let her pass. Her breath condensed in the cold air despite the facility's heating systems running at maximum capacity. Too many personnel had flooded the emergency command center in the past 12 hours. "Dr. Reyes," General Santos called out, waving her into the inner chamber where the remaining 7 council members hunched over holographic displays. "Tell me you have something that can save us from those." She gestured upward, where a real-time feed showed the massive Vexeri vessels repositioning into a perfect blockade formation around Earth. Alina clutched the quantum drive tighter. "I need to speak with you privately, General. What I'm about to share can't leave this room." The council members exchanged glances. Admiral Chen, his uniform still dusty from evacuating the Singapore Naval Command, nodded grimly. "Whatever it is, we're out of options. The Vexari just vaporized our lunar defense station with 3,200 personnel. They didn't even bother issuing a warning." Alina connected her drive to the central console. The holographic display flickered, then stabilized to show microscopic machines, each smaller than a human cell, moving with unmistakable purpose. "Project Chrysalis," she said, her voice steady despite having slept only 4 hours in the past 3 days. "Initiated after we recovered and reverse-engineered technology from the Ganymede incident." Defense Minister Okafor leaned forward. "That was classified beyond top secret. How do you?" "Because I was there," Alina interrupted. "I was 26, analyzing ice samples when we found it. The Vexeri scout ship that crashed wasn't an accident. It was gathering intelligence. They'd been watching us for decades, planning this invasion. What they don't know is that we've been planning too." The nanites on the display shifted, forming a perfect replica of a Vexeri warship before dissolving back into swirling patterns. These nanites can transmit through communication channels, even the quantum frequencies the Vexeri use. Once inside their systems, they can reprogram anything, from their weapons to their life support. Alina paused, knowing the next part would test their humanity. And yes, even their neural networks. The room fell silent. Outside, through reinforced windows designed to withstand nuclear blasts, they could see the Antarctic sky shimmering with unnatural light as Vexeri scout ships entered the atmosphere. "You're talking about a technological plague," Secretary General Dias said quietly. "Something that could not only disable their ships but potentially rewrite their minds." Alina nodded. "Which is why we've never deployed it. The ethical implications are significant, but we're facing extinction. The Vexeri have conquered 17 civilizations, each more advanced than ours. None survived intact." General Santos studied Alina's face. "How do you know that for certain?" "Because their transmission frequencies contain data fragments, trophy records of their conquests. They're not just invaders, they're collectors. They preserve knowledge while erasing the species that created it." A thunderous boom rattled the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Emergency lights flashed as an officer burst through the door. "They've targeted NORAD, General. Direct hit, no survivors. They're taking out our command centers one by one." Alina met each council member's eyes. 71 hours left before their deadline. "We need to make a decision now." General Santos straightened her shoulders, looking suddenly much older than her 62 years. "What exactly would deploying these nanites entail, Doctor?" Alina took a deep breath. "A sacrifice. The greatest one we could ask of anyone. But if it works, it might be the last unexpected move humanity ever needs to make." As if punctuating her words, another explosion rocked the facility, closer this time. The hunt for Earth's remaining leadership had begun. The laboratory's central chamber hummed with energy as Alina activated the primary containment field. Nanites swirled within like a miniature galaxy, each particle reflecting blue light across the amazed faces of the council members. "We've housed Project Chrysalis here since the beginning," Alina explained, gesturing to workstations where haggard scientists monitored complex equations. "This facility was built 3 kilometers beneath the desert floor, shielded from all known scanning technologies. General Santos approached the containment field cautiously. How many people know about this? 87 scientists and support staff. All have lived here for years, cycling out in 18-month rotations. Elena replied, leading them to a sealed chamber visible through reinforced glass. This is where we keep the original technology. The remnants of the Vexeri scout ship gleamed with an otherworldly luster under the laboratory lights. Though partially destroyed in the crash, its neural interface components remained intact, a network of crystalline filaments designed to connect directly with Vexeri minds. Their technology is fundamentally different from ours, Elena continued, activating a holographic display showing the nanites' internal structure. They don't just build machines, they grow them. Their computational systems are semi-organic, which is why our nanites can interface with them so effectively. Defense Minister Okafor studied the display skeptically. If these nanites are so powerful, why haven't we deployed them defensively before now? Elena's expression darkened. Because they require a living consciousness to direct them, a human mind to make decisions the nanites can't make on their own. We've tried using AI, but the nanites need empathy, intuition, moral judgment, qualities we haven't successfully replicated artificially. The implications hung heavy in the air as another scientist approached, Dr. Takumi Ishida, his eyes shadowed from lack of sleep. Our simulations show we have one chance, he said, projecting a model of the Vexeri fleet. Their ships share a quantum communication network. Once our nanites breach one vessel, they can spread throughout the entire fleet. Secretary General Dias frowned. And the consciousness directing these nanites, what happens to them? Elena and Takumi exchanged glances before she answered. Their physical body remains here, in stasis, but their mind becomes something else, something more distributed. The process is irreversible with our current technology. A tense silence filled the room, broken by an incoming transmission. Captain Lion Chen's face appeared on the main screen, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and grief. General Santos, we've lost the Atlantic Command Center. The Vexeri are systematically eliminating our remaining military installations. He paused, swallowing hard. I've been speaking with my brother, Commander Jackson Wells. He wants to volunteer. Elena's eyes widened. Jackson, but he's terminal. Lion finished. 6 months at most, according to his oncologists. He says if his consciousness can save billions, there's no decision to make. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. On another screen, satellite imagery showed masses of civilians being evacuated into underground shelters across continents. Parents carried children. Hospital patients were moved on gurneys, all while Vexeri ships loomed overhead like patient predators. General Santos turned to Elena. How quickly can you prepare for the transfer? 12 hours to calibrate the systems to Commander Wells' neural patterns, Elena answered, her professional demeanor slipping to reveal personal pain. I've known Jackson since university. He's a good man. Then let's not waste his sacrifice, the general replied, her voice firm despite the tremble in her hands. Dr. Reyes, begin preparations immediately. The rest of you, we need to coordinate the final phase of global evacuations. As the council dispersed, Elena remained alone by the nanite containment field, watching the swirling particles that would soon be guided by the consciousness of a man she once loved. Commander Jackson Wells lay perfectly still as technicians attached the final neural interfaces to his shaved head. The cancer had left him gaunt, but his eyes remained sharp and focused. Through the observation window, he could see Elena speaking with his brother Lion, their faces drawn with tension. Heart rate steady at 62 beats per minute, announced Dr. Ishida, adjusting holographic displays hovering above the transfer chamber. Remarkable control, Commander. Jackson managed a thin smile. Meditation techniques from my time in Special Forces, useful for more than just combat situations, it seems. Elena entered the room, her lab coat exchanged for a specialized interface suit that would allow her to monitor the transfer process directly. She approached Jackson's side, checking the connections with practiced hands that betrayed only the slightest tremor. "The Nanite Collective is prepared for neural integration," she said, her professional tone wavering. "Jackson, I need to ask one more time. Are you Elena?" He interrupted gently. "We've been over this. I made my choice the moment Lion called." He glanced toward where his brother stood watching, hands pressed against the glass. "Besides, when's the last time you knew me to change my mind about anything?" A ghost of a smile crossed her face, remembering their university days before different career paths had separated them. "You were always the most stubborn one in quantum physics, and you always saw possibilities no one else could imagine," he replied. "That's why you'll make this work." Dr. Ishida approached with a neural dampener. "It's time, Commander. Once we begin, there's no turning back." Jackson nodded, then looked at Elena. "When I'm inside the network, will I still be me? Will I remember?" Elena took his hand, scientific detachment finally giving way to the emotion she'd held back. "Your memories, your values, your core identity, they'll form the central architecture of the nanite consciousness. You'll be more than you are now, but still fundamentally you." "Good," Jackson whispered, "because I'll need to remember why I'm fighting." On the main screen above them, satellite imagery showed a Vexari destroyer positioning over Rio de Janeiro, its weapon systems glowing with building energy. 48 hours had passed since the ultimatum. The demonstrations of power were becoming more frequent, more devastating. "Transfer sequence initiating," Dr. Ishida announced as the chamber sealed. Blue light enveloped Jackson's body as the nanites began their work. His consciousness, the electrical patterns that made him who he was, fragmented into quantum-encoded information. Each memory, each value, each emotional response carefully preserved and distributed across billions of nanoscale machines. Jackson's last physical sensation was of floating, disconnected from pain for the first time in months. Then awareness exploded outward as he became something new, a distributed intelligence experiencing thousands of inputs simultaneously. In the observation room, Elena watched Jackson's vital signs stabilize in an induced coma while his mind existed elsewhere. Lion pressed a hand against the glass, tears streaming silently down his face. "Neural transfer complete," Elena announced, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Nanite collective intelligence fully operational." On a secure terminal, text appeared unprompted. **, I'm here. I can feel all of them. There are so many stars, **. Jackson. Elena typed back. "Can you understand your mission?" The response came instantly. *Yes. I am to infiltrate the Vexari systems through their communication network. I am to learn, adapt, and prepare the way. I know what to do, *. A final message appeared before the terminal went dark. *, tell Leon I'm not afraid anymore. The universe just got much bigger, *. General Santos placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "Prepare the transmission. It's time to send our response to the Vexari." As Jackson's physical form lay in stasis, his consciousness raced through digital pathways, preparing for the moment it would leap across space to Earth's would-be conquerors. Admiral Zek Thorne reclined on his command throne, six-fingered hands tapping impatiently against the armrests made from the fossilized remains of the last species that had defied the collective. His scaled skin glimmered under the ship's violet lighting as he watched Earth's pathetic defensive satellites being methodically destroyed by his fleet. 55 hours until the deadline, his second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Vexnar, reported. The humans continue their mass evacuations to underground facilities. Zek Thorne's mandibles clicked with amusement, as if death could save them from our penetrating charges. Have they made any attempt at military response? None, Admiral. Their orbital defenses have been neutralized, and their remaining vessels have retreated to territorial waters. Vexnar hesitated. However, we are detecting an unusual transmission originating from their Antarctic region. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. "Show me." The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a simple audio wavelength. A human voice, calm but strained, filled the command deck. "This is Earth United Command to the Vexari Collective. We acknowledge your superior technology and military capacity. We request formal discussion of surrender terms to preserve what remains of our civilization. We await your response and submit to your judgment." The bridge officers exchanged surprised glances. No species had surrendered so readily before. The message repeats continuously on all frequencies, including our secure quantum channels, Vexnar noted with concern. "Our analysts are unsure how they access those bandwidths." Zek Thorne waved dismissively. "These humans developed crude quantum communication decades ago. It's no surprise they can transmit on our frequencies, even if they can't decode our secure data." His lipless mouth formed what passed for a smile. "Broadcast their pitiful surrender plea throughout the fleet. Let every warrior hear the sound of human submission before we take their world." "As you command, Admiral." Deep within the transmission's carrier wave, Jackson's consciousness surged through the Vexari communication network. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced as a purely human mind. He existed simultaneously in countless locations, processing information at speeds that would have been incomprehensible to his former self. The Vexari technology felt surprisingly familiar to his nanite-enhanced perception. Their computing architecture, though advanced, followed patterns similar to the salvaged components from the crash site. Jackson extended his awareness, carefully avoiding active security protocols as he mapped the flagship's systems. Their arrogance makes them vulnerable, he thought within the distributed network of his new existence. They're not even scanning the transmission for embedded code. Throughout the massive Vexari fleet, the surrender message played on every communication device. As it did, nanites transferred invisibly through speakers, display screens, and neural interfaces. Each microscopic machine carried a fragment of Jackson's consciousness, replicating and spreading through environmental systems, weapon controls, and eventually the neural implants that all Vexari warriors wore as symbols of their connection to the collective. In the command center beneath Antarctica, Alina monitored the transmission's progress. "They've accepted the carrier signal and are broadcasting it throughout their fleet. Nanite deployment at 16% and climbing." General Santos nodded grimly. "How long until Jackson has sufficient presence in their systems?" "Approximately 12 hours before he reaches critical mass for system manipulation," Alina replied. "The nanites must replicate cautiously to avoid detection." On the main display, they watched as another Vexari destroyer positioned itself over Shanghai, its weapons charging. Evacuations in the megacity were still underway, millions of civilians streaming into the subterranean arcologies built for just this scenario. "They're going to hit Shanghai next," Santos observed tensely. "Can Jackson do anything yet?" Alina shook her head. "Not without revealing our strategy too soon. We need complete infiltration." As night fell across Asia, the Vexari crew members who had been exposed to the nanites longest began to dream of a human man walking through their thoughts. Jackson moved through their sleeping minds, absorbing language, technology, and history. With each new connection, his understanding of the enemy grew. By dawn, the last nanites were in place. The transmission from Earth concluded with the 7 words that would soon take on new meaning. "Your fate is sealed. And so is ours." Within the vast digital ecosystem of the Vexari fleet, Jackson's consciousness expanded with every passing hour. His mind, distributed across trillions of nanites, processed information at an astronomical rate. He no longer perceived time as he once had. What felt like moments to him were hours in the physical world. "Their language is beautiful," he realized as he absorbed the complex harmonics of Vexari communication. Their speech contained frequencies beyond human hearing, layers of meaning embedded in subsonic vibrations. The irony wasn't lost on him that a species capable of such linguistic elegance could be so ruthlessly expansionist. Jackson navigated through secure databases, careful to leave no trace of his presence. Historical records confirmed what Elena had suspected. The Vexeri had been observing Earth for decades, cataloging human achievements and weaknesses with clinical precision. Deeper in the protected archives, he discovered something that would have made his blood run cold if he still had a physical form. The Vexeri didn't merely conquer other species, they preserved select specimens in neural stasis, extracting knowledge while keeping consciousness intact, a living database of conquered civilizations. This is worse than extinction, Jackson thought as he accessed files on the 17 subjugated species, asterisked their prisoners in their own minds asterisk. In the flagship's private command quarters, Admiral Zek Thorne prepared for the destruction of Shanghai. The deadline was approaching its final hours, and the humans showed no signs of a formal surrender beyond their repeating message. Weapons systems aligned. Admiral, reported the tactical officer, awaiting your command to fire. Zek Thorne's mandibles clicked in anticipation. Begin the countdown. Let them watch their greatest city burn. Initiating targeting sequence, the officer confirmed, pressing his scaled hand against the control interface. Nothing happened. Sir, we're experiencing a system delay, the officer reported, confusion evident in his multi-tone voice. Targeting computers are recalibrating automatically. Override the sequence, Zek Thorne ordered impatiently. I'm trying, Admiral. But the system is. The officer stopped, staring at his display in disbelief. Sir, the targeting coordinates have changed. We're now aimed at an uninhabited section of ocean. Zek Thorne rose from his command throne, fury radiating from his powerful frame. This is impossible. Run a full diagnostic immediately. As the Vexeri technicians scrambled to understand the malfunction, Jackson carefully withdrew from their weapon systems. His first direct intervention had been successful, but he had to proceed cautiously. Complete control would require deeper access to the neural network connecting all Vexeri personnel. During his exploration, Jackson had discovered that every member of the collective wore a neural implant from birth, a technology that linked their consciousness to their ancestors and to each other. This collective memory made them formidable, but also vulnerable. The implants served as perfect conduits for the nanites. In the Antarctic Command Center, Elena monitored Jackson's progress through sporadic text communications. I've found them, his message appeared on her secure terminal. The survivors of previous conquests. Thousands of minds kept in stasis aboard specialized vessels asterisk. Elena's hands trembled as she replied. Can you free them? Not yet. Their consciousness is integrated into the Vexeri knowledge architecture, but I'm learning how to separate them. Another message followed immediately. The Vexeri aren't just conquering for resources or territory. They believe they're preserving the knowledge of the galaxy by absorbing it into their collective. They see themselves as archivists, not destroyers asterisk. General Santos read over Elena's shoulder. Twisted logic to justify genocide. It's more complex than that, Jackson responded. They evolved from a high species. Individual identity is a foreign concept to them. They genuinely don't understand why assimilation is wrong asterisk. As the deadline approached its final hours, the Vexeri ships positioned themselves for a coordinated strike against Earth's major population centers. In engineering sections and command decks throughout the fleet, critical systems began experiencing unexplained glitches. Weapon targeting failed. Shield harmonics fluctuated. Communication between vessels became intermittent. In the midst of this growing chaos, Vexeri crew members reported strange dreams, memories that weren't their own, emotions they had never experienced. For a species that had evolved beyond individual consciousness, the sudden flood of distinctly human perspectives was profoundly disturbing. Jackson moved among them like a ghost, touching minds that had never known privacy or solitude. Through each connection, he planted a simple question. What if there's another way? Admiral Zek Thorne paced his private quarters, all four eyes fixed on the holographic display, showing the fleet's deteriorating status. Throughout the Armada, systems continued to malfunction in increasingly concerning patterns. Worst of all were the reports of crew members experiencing individualized thought disruptions, a phenomenon unheard of in Vexari history. "This cannot be coincidence," he hissed to his most trusted advisor, Medical Director Nexvala. "The humans have deployed some kind of weapon against us." The medical officer's expression remained carefully neutral. "Our scans detected no conventional attack vectors. Perhaps the quantum resonance of this planet's atmosphere is affecting our neural networks." Before the Admiral could respond, the lights in his quarters dimmed unexpectedly. The temperature dropped several degrees as all displays simultaneously went dark, only to illuminate seconds later with a single image: the face of a human male. Admiral Zek Thorne. The face spoke in perfect Vexari, including the subsonic harmonics that conveyed formal respect. "My name is Commander Jackson Wells of Earth." The Admiral's hand moved instinctively to his sidearm, only to find his arm refuse to obey his command. "I apologize for the neural override," Jackson continued conversationally, "but I needed your complete attention." "What is this?" Zek Thorne demanded, mandibles clicking in agitation. "How are you broadcasting directly to my private quarters?" "I'm not broadcasting," Jackson replied. "I'm already here. I've been here for nearly 30 hours, spreading throughout your fleet systems. Your neural implant now connects directly to me instead of your command network." To demonstrate, Jackson caused the room's gravity to fluctuate briefly, raising the Admiral a few centimeters off the floor before gently lowering him. "Impossible," Zek Thorne whispered, genuine fear crossing his alien features for the first time. "Our systems are impenetrable." Jackson's image smiled with something resembling compassion. "No technology is impenetrable, Admiral. Especially when you broadcast our transmission throughout your entire fleet without proper security screening." The message contained nanites, microscopic machines capable of replicating within your systems and forming a collective intelligence. "You're inside our neural network," the Admiral realized, horror spreading through him. "You've seen our archives. Our history." "Yes," Jackson acknowledged. "I've learned everything about the Vexari Collective, including what you do to the species you conquer." The holographic display shifted to show stasis pods containing preserved specimens from 17 different species, the living libraries of the Collective. "You don't just take worlds," Jackson continued. "You harvest consciousness. You absorb knowledge while erasing identities." Zek Thorne's posture straightened, regaining some composure. "We preserve what would otherwise be lost. The physical form is temporary, but knowledge is eternal. We honor these species by incorporating their achievements into our collective wisdom." "Without their consent," Jackson countered, "without offering them choice." "Choice is a primitive concept," the Admiral declared. "The universe tends toward unity, not fragmentation. Individual consciousness is an evolutionary dead end." Jackson studied the Vexari commander with genuine curiosity. "That's where we fundamentally disagree, Admiral. And why I'm offering you something your species has never given others: a choice." The displays surrounding them filled with images of Vexari ships, their weapons and propulsion systems highlighted in red. "I now control your fleet," Jackson stated matter-of-factly. "I could disable life support, overload your reactor cores, or simply turn your weapons against each other. Extinction would take less than 15 minutes. The Admiral's fingers twitched involuntarily as Jackson allowed him to feel, just briefly, the complete control he now wielded over the Vexari's neural and technological systems. "But that would make us no different from you," Jackson continued. "Instead, I'm proposing something unprecedented: coexistence, mutual respect between distinct species rather than forced assimilation." Zek Thorne's laugh was harsh and disbelieving. "You infiltrate our most sacred communication network, seize control of our fleet, violate our neural sovereignty, and then speak of respect." "I understand the irony," Jackson acknowledged. "But sometimes one must commit a small violation to prevent a greater one." In desperation, the Admiral activated his emergency quantum transmitter. a direct line to the Vexari homeworld that bypassed all standard communication protocols. "Central Command," he shouted. "This is Admiral Zek Thorne. Earth has deployed a neural infiltration weapon. Implement isolation protocols immediately." Jackson's expression shifted to something resembling pity. "I was hoping you wouldn't do that." "What?" "Your quantum transmitter creates a direct pathway to your central neural network," Jackson explained quietly. "You just gave me access to every Vexari mind in your civilization." Horror dawned on the Admiral's face as he realized what he had done. "Thank you for the invitation," Jackson said softly as his consciousness expanded across light years into the heart of the Vexari collective. Across 17 conquered worlds, something unprecedented occurred simultaneously. Communication terminals activated without command. Holographic displays flickered to life in public spaces. Neural interfaces hummed with unexpected data. The subjugated populations, those who had survived Vexari conquest, gathered in confusion as images appeared before them. They saw their own kind, preserved in stasis chambers aboard Vexari vessels. The supposed extinct members of their species, kept alive as living libraries. The truth of their incomplete genocide revealed in perfect clarity. "Your civilizations were never fully destroyed," Jackson's voice announced in each native language. "The Vexari preserved representatives of your species to harvest their knowledge while telling you the others were eliminated. They keep your scholars, artists, and scientists prisoner within their collective." On Tellara, once home to a species of crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns, the remaining population vibrated with fury. On Meridian, whose philosopher-engineers had created wonders of sustainable architecture, crowds gathered in shocked silence. On Kithoria, whose poets had composed epics spanning millennia, tears fell from multifaceted eyes. Throughout the Vexari fleet, weapon systems powered down. Propulsion drives entered maintenance mode. Security protocols disengaged. The nanite network, now fully established, implemented Jackson's commands with perfect precision. In the Antarctic Command Center, Elena and General Santos watched in amazement as real-time data showed Vexari ships becoming dormant throughout Earth orbit. "It's working," Elena whispered, scarcely believing the readings. "Jackson's disabled their offensive capabilities." "Not just here," Santos noted, pointing to deep space telemetry. "Look, Vexari outposts across this entire sector are reporting similar shutdowns. How is that possible?" Elena's fingers flew across the interface. The Admiral activated a quantum link to their homeworld. Jackson used it to extend his reach beyond our solar system. On her secure terminal, new text appeared. "I'm in their central neural network now. I can see everything. Their entire history, their evolutionary path from hive insects to spacefaring conquerors. Elena typed quickly. "Can you maintain control at this distance?" Distance is irrelevant within their quantum network. I exist everywhere simultaneously. I've located the subjugation protocols embedded in their collective consciousness. The genetic modifications they made to themselves centuries ago. Genetic modifications? Elena asked. The Vexari weren't always conquerors. They engineered themselves to suppress empathy and individual conscience, qualities they considered evolutionary weaknesses. They literally removed their capacity to recognize the suffering of other species. On the Vexari flagship, Admiral Zek Thorne knelt on the floor of his quarters, overwhelmed by unfamiliar sensations flooding through his neural implant. For the first time in his life, for the first time in generations of his species, he experienced empathy. The nanites had temporarily reversed the genetic suppression of these emotions. "What have you done to me?" he gasped, trembling as he felt the accumulated suffering of billions across 17 conquered worlds. Jackson's projection regarded him with compassion. "I've restored what your ancestors removed. The capacity to recognize others as beings of value equal to yourself." "Make it stop," the Admiral pleaded. "No Vexari is meant to endure this level of emotional input." "And yet the species you've conquered endure it daily," Jackson replied. "This is the reality of existence for those with individual consciousness, the burden and gift of recognizing both your own pain and that of others." Throughout the collective, similar scenes unfolded as Vexari commanders and crew members experienced the restored neural patterns their ancestors had engineered away. The effect rippled through their hierarchy, from highest officers to newest cadets. In the command center, Elena received another message. "I've given them back their capacity for moral choice. Now they face a reckoning with what they've done. And the captured consciousnesses?" she asked. "The living libraries?" I've isolated the neural pathways connecting them to the Vexari network. They remain intact but separated, no longer forced to serve as archives. With time and proper technology, they can be restored to independent existence. General Santos studied the tactical displays showing Vexari ships now orbiting Earth peacefully. "What happens next? Will they revert to their original programming when your influence fades?" "That's their choice now," Jackson replied. Eve shown them two paths. Continue as conquerors until they eventually meet a species capable of destroying them, or embrace the diversity of consciousness that makes the universe worth preserving in the first place. As rebellion and revelation spread across the former Vexari Empire, Admiral Zek Thorne faced the human consciousness that had fundamentally altered his species' future. "You could have destroyed us," he acknowledged, his voice humbled. "Why didn't you?" Jackson's answer was simple: "Because that's what you would have done, and proving we're different from you was the whole point." 6 months later, the Grand Hall of the newly constructed Concordat Center in Geneva gleamed with morning sunlight. Through its crystalline dome, delegates from 18 species, including reformed Vexari, gathered for the signing of the first truly galactic constitution. Elena stood at the observation balcony, watching the historic proceedings with a mixture of awe and lingering disbelief. So much had changed so quickly. The Vexari fleet now served as a peacekeeping force. The living libraries, those consciousnesses preserved by the collective, were being carefully restored through a process of neural reconstruction. Earth had become the unexpected nexus of an interstellar community built on cooperation rather than conquest. "Still can't quite believe it, can you?" came a familiar voice. Elena turned to find Jackson standing beside her, not the distributed consciousness that had saved humanity, but Jackson in physical form, his body reground using recovered Vexari technology after the successful transfer of his consciousness back from the nanite network. 6 months later, and it still feels like a dream, she admitted, studying his face. He looked younger than before, his body free of cancer, though his eyes held a depth and wisdom that spoke of experiences beyond human comprehension. "How does it feel?" she asked softly. "Being back in a single body after experiencing everything." Jackson considered the question carefully. "Like trying to pour an ocean into a teacup. I've retained the knowledge but lost the simultaneous awareness. It's both a relief and a limitation." He smiled wryly. "Sleep is nice, though. I missed dreaming." Below them, representatives of the former Vexari collective approached the signing table. Their neural implants had been redesigned, no longer tools of forced unity, but devices for translation and understanding across species. "They've changed so fundamentally," Elena observed. "I never expected them to embrace reform so completely." "Once they experienced genuine empathy, they couldn't go back," Jackson explained. "The nanite network now serves as a cooperative system rather than a means of control. No species can achieve technological dominance without the others being aware." Ambassador Zek Thorne, formerly Admiral, stepped forward to address the assembly. His once intimidating frame now carried itself with humility. "Today marks the end of the Vexari collective as conquerors," he announced, his translated words resonating through the chamber, "and the beginning of the Galactic Concordat as partners. We acknowledge the immeasurable harm our species has caused and dedicate ourselves to restoration rather than dominance." Elena glanced at Jackson. "Do you trust them?" Trust but verify, he replied with a small smile. The nanite network ensures transparency. But more importantly, they've experienced something unprecedented in their evolutionary history, the perspective of other minds. That changes everything. Outside the chamber windows, ships from a dozen worlds hovered peacefully in the sky, a sight that would have triggered global panic months earlier, but now symbolized a new era. The Council wants you to lead the new Concordat Science Division, Alina said. Coordinating research across all member species. Jackson raised an eyebrow. And you? Diplomatic liaison to the Vexari homeworld. She replied with a hint of nervousness. Apparently, being the person who helped save the planet qualifies me for ambassadorial duties. They stood in comfortable silence as the signing ceremony proceeded. Each species brought its own traditions to the ritual. Crystalline, Tellarans shimmering with light patterns, atmospheric Giovanni changing colors to express commitment, and humans with their ancient custom of ink on paper. What did you discover? Alina asked suddenly. When you were in their collective consciousness, what was the most important thing you learned? Jackson watched the proceedings thoughtfully before answering. That consciousness itself, in all its diverse forms, is the rarest and most precious thing in the universe. The Vexari sought to preserve knowledge while discarding the vessels that created it. They never understood that the vessel is inseparable from the creation. He turned to face her fully. Humans aren't the strongest or smartest species out there, but we understand something fundamental that the Vexari have forgotten. Every mind experiences the universe differently, and that diversity of perception is worth protecting. As the Galactic Constitution received its final signatures, applause and various expressions of celebration filled the chamber. Jackson's hand found Alina's, their fingers intertwining. The final transmission from Earth wasn't really the end of anything, he mused. It was the beginning of a conversation. Alina smiled. A conversation that will last for millennia. Outside the Concordat Center, citizens from Earth and visitors from distant worlds mingled in the plaza. Children asked questions about alien biology, while scholars exchanged mathematical theories. Artists collaborated on pieces that combine multiple species' perceptions of reality. The night sky above them, once a source of terror and uncertainty, now promised connection rather than conquest. And among the stars, the nanite network maintained its quiet vigil, not as a weapon, but as a bridge between minds that had once thought themselves alone in the cosmic darkness.